There exists a moment when your entire being recognizes something your conscious mind refuses to accept. A presence enters your life, and suddenly every defense you've built, every rational explanation you've rehearsed, every wall you've erected around your heart begins to crumble in silence. You know without knowing how you know. And that knowing terrifies you more than any uncertainty ever could. This is not about romantic fantasy or soulmate mythology. This is about a psychological phenomenon Carl Jung observed throughout decades of clinical work. A pattern so consistent it demanded acknowledgement even from the most skeptical minds. When certain people enter your life, something ancient within you awakens. Not desire, not attraction, recognition. Your psyche responds to a frequency it has been searching for, since before you were conscious enough to understand what searching meant. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you believe about choice, control, and the nature of profound human connection. Jung identified specific markers, psychological events that signal when someone carries weight beyond the personal, beyond the accidental. And here is what troubles most people. These markers often appear before you're ready to see them, before you're brave enough to trust them, before your ego is willing to surrender its need for certainty. The question is not whether the signs exist. The question is whether you possess the courage to honor what your deeper self already knows. Within every human being lives a hidden image, an inner blueprint of the opposite that shapes who you seek without your conscious awareness. Jung called these the Anima and animus, the feminine essence dwelling within the masculine psyche and the masculine essence residing within the feminine soul. These are not mere concepts or abstract theories. They are living forces, autonomous presences that influence your attractions, your rejections, your patterns of longing and disappointment. They whisper in the darkness of your unconscious, drawing you towards certain faces, certain voices, certain souls. When you encounter someone who embodies this inner image with startling precision, something profound occurs. It is not infatuation, though it may be confused for it. It is not projection alone, though projection plays its role. It is recognition of an archetype made flakamotu, the mysterious moment when your interior world finds its mirror in external reality. Your body knows before your mind can articulate. Your breath changes, time distorts. There is a sensation of having known this person across lifetimes, though you've just met. This is the anima or animus stirring from its depths, recognizing itself in the other. But here lies the danger and the promise intertwined. Many people mistake the intensity of this recognition for the relationship itself. They fall in love with their own projection, with the image rather than the person. They worship the archetype and ignore the human being standing before them with flaws, wounds, limitations. Jung understood this trap intimately. The initial recognition is not the destination, it is the doorway. The real work begins when you must withdraw the projection without losing the connection, when you must see the person clearly and choose them not because they carry your inner image, but because of who they actually are beyond it. The person who truly matters is the one who can survive this withdrawal of projection, the one who remains compelling even after you've stripped away the archetype, peeled back the fantasy, confronted the ordinary humanity beneath the luminous first impression. This is rare. This requires psychological maturity from both souls involved. But when it happens, when recognition evolves into authentic seeing and you still choose each other, you have moved beyond the anima and animus into something more real, more demanding, more transformative. Think of how your past relationships have shaped you, not through their success but through their failure to penetrate deeply enough. You may have encountered people who stirred something in you, only to discover later that what was stirred was not recognition but need, not depth but desperation. Jung understood that we learn discernment through error, through the countless times we mistook intensity for meaning, projection for connection. Each false start teaches your psyche to recognize the authentic when it finally appears. The right person feels different not because they are perfect, but because their presence activates a different layer of your being entirely. One that has remained dormant through all your previous attempts at intimacy. Have you noticed how certain encounters seem orchestrated by forces beyond your understanding? How symbols repeat themselves, how dreams foreshadow meetings, how the world arranges itself in patterns too precise to dismiss as mere chance. Jung named this synchronicity, and he observed it most powerfully in relationships that carried psychological significance. When two people are meant to cross paths, the unconscious begins preparing the ground long before the conscious meeting occurs. You might dream of someone before you know their name. You might encounter the same number, the same song, the same phrase echoing through your days until the moment arrives. Synchronicity does not prove destiny in some fatalistic sense. It reveals that your psyche is paying attention, that something within you recognizes the importance of what is about to unfold. The unconscious speaks in symbols because symbols carry more truth than facts, more meaning than logic. Yet most people rationalize these experiences into nothing. Coincidence, they say. Pattern recognition, they insist. Confirmation bias, they conclude with relief, grateful to explain away what frightens them. And yes, sometimes it is those things. But sometimes, often more than we admit, it is the language of the soul trying to communicate through the only channels available to it. The tragedy is not that synchronicity is rare. The tragedy is how often it is recognized and then dismissed because the rational mind cannot tolerate the irrational, cannot surrender to mystery without proof. When you ignore genuine synchronicity, you are not being wise or cautious. You are committing a subtle form of self-betrayal. You are telling your psyche that its wisdom doesn't matter, that only external validation counts, that your inner knowing is less trustworthy than the opinions of those who have never felt what you feel. There is a difference between healthy skepticism and defensive rationalization. One protects you from delusion. The other protects you from truth. If the same symbols keep appearing, if dreams and waking reality begin to mirror each other with uncanny precision around a particular person, Jung would say, pay attention. Not with blind faith, but with respectful curiosity. Ask what your unconscious is trying to reveal. Ask what needs to be integrated. The universe is not sending you signs like a cosmic delivery service. Your own psyche is speaking to you in the only language it knows, and sometimes that language manifests through what appears to be external coincidence. The person who matters most in your life will not arrive as comfort. They will arrive as revelation, often uncomfortable, always confronting. Jung taught that the most significant encounters do not soothe your wounds, they expose them. They do not confirm who you believe you are. They shatter your self-image and demand that you see yourself more honestly. This is because true connection operates through the mechanism of shadow projection. Your shadow contains everything you have rejected about yourself, every quality you judged as unacceptable, every impulse you buried beneath layers of social conditioning and personal shame. These rejected parts do not disappear. They live in the darkness of your unconscious, and they project themselves onto others with stunning accuracy. The person who triggers your strongest reactions, who irritates you most intensely, who disturbs your peace in ways you cannot rationally explain, is often carrying aspects of your own shadow. This is why you might feel simultaneous attraction and repulsion toward the same person, why you might admire and resent them in equal measure, and why their presence stirs something ancient and uncomfortable within you. They are not doing anything to you. They are simply existing in a way that mirrors what you have disowned. And your psyche, desperate for wholeness, creates intense emotional reactions to force you to see what you refuse to see about yourself. The right person, in Jung's understanding, is not the one who makes you feel safe and validated. It is the one who makes integration unavoidable. They will embody qualities you have rejected in yourself. They will provoke reactions you don't want to have. They will show you the parts of your shadow you've worked hardest to keep hidden. And if you have the courage to recognize this dynamic, if you can withdraw your projections and reclaim your shadow instead of blaming them for carrying it, transformation becomes possible. This is the alchemy of profound relationship, not two half people becoming whole through fusion, but two whole people confronting their incompleteness together. The intensity you feel is not love, not yet. It is your psyche recognizing an opportunity for growth, for integration, for becoming more fully yourself by facing what you have refused to face alone. Most relationships fail at this stage because people lack the maturity to see the pattern. They blame the other for making them feel uncomfortable, or they cling to the discomfort as proof of passion, never understanding that both responses miss the point entirely. When you can stand before someone who mirrors your shadow and say, "This is mine, not yours, this belongs to me and I reclaim it," then something sacred begins. The person who can withstand that reclamation, who doesn't need to carry your projections to feel valued, who remains present as you integrate what you've denied, that person is offering you something most people never experience. They are offering you the chance to become whole. Consider the weight of truly being seen, not admired, not idealized, not placed on a pedestal or reduced to a fantasy, but seen in your full humanity with all your contradictions intact. Most people fear this more than rejection itself. To be witnessed in your weakness, your pettiness, your wounds that have not yet healed, and to remain chosen anyway, this is what Jung meant by psychological intimacy. The right person does not love you despite your flaws, as if your wholeness were something to be tolerated. They recognize that your light and your darkness are inseparable, that your capacity for depth is born from the same source as your capacity for error. This kind of seeing strips away all performance, all pretense, and what remains is terrifyingly real. Jung spoke of the Coniunctio, the alchemical marriage, as the union of opposites within the psyche. But he also recognized that this interior process often mirrors itself in external relationships. When two psychologically mature individuals come together, they do not merge into fusion or codependence. They remain distinct, sovereign, whole. And from that wholeness, from the tension between two complete beings, something new emerges. Not a loss of self, but the creation of a third force that transcends both while diminishing neither. This is the paradox of mature love. You do not need the other to complete you because you have done the work of integration. You have reclaimed your anima or animus. You have faced your shadow and made peace with your fragmentation. You come to the relationship already whole. And precisely because you are whole, you can create genuine intimacy without losing yourself in it. You can be profoundly connected without being consumed. Immature love seeks completion. It looks for someone to fill the voids, to carry the rejected parts, to make you feel adequate by their presence. This is not relationship. It is mutual dependency dressed in romantic language. It feels intense because dependency always does. But intensity is not depth. Desperation is not devotion. The terror of being alone is not the same as the joy of being together. The right person does not complete you. They challenge you to complete yourself. They do not fill your emptiness. They illuminate it so you can fill it yourself. They do not carry your disowned parts full. They reflect them back until you're forced to integrate them. This is not easy. This is not the fairy tale sold by popular culture. This requires that you die to who you pretended to be and resurrect as who you actually are. Most people are not willing to undergo this death. They prefer the comfort of their illusions to the terror of authenticity. But when two people are willing, when both are committed to this alchemical process of mutual revelation and individual integration, what emerges is something rare, a relationship that does not diminish either person but amplifies both, a connection that serves the individuation of each soul rather than the ego gratification of either. This is the Coniunctio Jung discernment, and it is not common because it demands more courage than most possess, and you will know you are in the presence of this possibility when transformation becomes inevitable. When you cannot remain unchanged in their presence no matter how hard you try. When their existence demands that you grow, evolve, shed old skins, question cherished beliefs, abandon comfortable lies. The right person is not the one who lets you stay small. They are the one who makes remaining small impossible. There exists within you a center deeper than ego, more expansive than conscious identity. Jung called it the self, the totality of the psyche, the organizing principle that transcends the small voice of the I you think you are. The ego operates through thought, analysis, doubt, fear. The self operates through knowing, a quiet certainty that requires no evidence and tolerates no argument. When you encounter someone truly significant, your ego will spin with questions and objections and rational concerns, but beneath that noise, the self remains silent and absolute in its recognition. This is not the false certainty of infatuation or the desperate conviction of need. This is a bodily knowing, a truth felt in your bones, in your breath, in the way time seems to slow and sharpen when they are near. Your body recognizes what your mind cannot yet accept. There is a quietness at your core that simply says yes, not with excitement or urgency, but with the calm finality of something that was always true and has only now been revealed. The difficulty is distinguishing between the voice of the self and the voice of desire masquerading as intuition. Desire is loud, demanding, anxious. It wants proof, reassurance, immediate gratification. The self is quiet, patient, unbothered by doubt. It does not need to convince you because it is not trying to persuade. It is simply stating what is, the way gravity states itself without argument. You either listen or you don't. The truth remains regardless. Jung taught his patients to pay attention to this difference, to notice whether their certainty felt urgent or peaceful, whether it demanded action or simply observed reality, whether it grew stronger when questioned or dissolved under scrutiny. Genuine intuition, the voice of the self, becomes clearer the more you examine it. False certainty, the voice of ego masquerading as depth, crumbles when confronted with honest inquiry. When you know through the self rather than through the ego, you feel it as a recognition rather than a decision. You are not choosing to feel certain. You are acknowledging a certainty that already exists. This person matters. Not because they fulfill a fantasy, not because they solve a problem, not because they make you feel a certain way, but because your total being, conscious and unconscious together, has recognized them as significant. And that recognition carries a weight that no amount of rational doubt can fully dissolve. This is what Jung meant when he said not to hesitate. He was not encouraging recklessness or romantic impulsivity. He was honoring the wisdom of the psyche when it speaks in fullness. If the self has recognized, if synchronicity has marked the path, if the anima or animus has awakened, if shadow projection has begun the work of integration, if transformation is already underway, then doubt becomes a form of self-betrayal. Not the healthy doubt that questions false certainty, but the defensive doubt that refuses truth because truth demands too much. The ultimate test is this: can you trust what you know without needing to understand how you know it? Can you honor the voice that speaks beneath words, the recognition that precedes thought, the certainty that exists independent of proof? Your ego will demand guarantees. Your fear will insist on safety. Your conditioning will require rational justification. But the self does not negotiate with these forces. It simply knows, and your choice is whether to align with that knowing or spend your life second-guessing what was already true. Yet Jung never promised ease. He promised truth, and truth includes conflict, difficulty, the constant confrontation with parts of yourself you would rather not face. The right person does not make your life simple. They make it real. And reality is not comfortable. Reality demands that you show up as you are, not as you wish to be. Reality requires that you integrate your shadow instead of projecting it. Reality insists that you grow even when growth hurts. So when all the signs converge, when synchronicity multiplies, when your anima or animus blazes with recognition, when your shadow is being mirrored with precision, when the self whispers its quiet knowing beneath the ego's anxious chatter, you face a choice. You can retreat into analysis, demand proof, protect yourself from the unknown, maintain control at the cost of connection. Or you can trust the language your psyche speaks. Honor the symbols it offers, and step into the mystery of a meeting that transcends your understanding. The person who truly belongs in your life will not wait forever while you deliberate, not because they are impatient, but because people who have done their own work, who have integrated their shadow and individuated their self, do not settle for half-hearted commitment. They do not need you to be perfect, but they do need you to be present. They do not demand certainty, but they do require courage. This is the final marker Jung identified. When everything aligns, when every psychological indicator points toward significance, the only thing standing between you and genuine connection is your willingness to surrender the illusion of control. To admit that you do not understand everything, to trust a knowing deeper than reason, to let go of who you thought you were and become who you actually are in the presence of someone who sees you completely. Some encounters demand everything from you. They require that you die to old identities, release cherished self-images, abandon the safety of predictability. They ask you to be more honest than you've ever been, more vulnerable than feels safe, more trusting than logic permits. And if you refuse, if you insist on guarantees before risking your heart, you will watch significance walk away while your ego congratulates you for being reasonable. But if you listen, if you honor what your depth already knows, if you trust the constellation of symbols and sensations and synchronicities that have marked this meeting as essential, then you step into the territory where transformation lives. You might fail. You might be hurt. You might discover that recognition was only the beginning of a longer, harder journey. But you will not spend your life wondering what would have happened if you had been brave enough to trust yourself. What separates those who find genuine connection from those who spend decades searching is not luck or timing, but willingness to be disturbed. The people who recognize the right person when they appear are those who have stopped demanding that love arrive in comfortable packages, who have made peace with the fact that depth requires descent. They understand that the psyche does not reward safety-seeking. It rewards psychological honesty. When you meet someone who activates every layer of your being simultaneously, who makes you feel more alive and more terrified than you've felt in years. Your task is not to control the experience, but to remain present within it, to let the alchemy unfold without trying to direct its course. This is the great paradox Jung observed. You must engage fully while releasing all attempts to manage the outcome. Jung's work was never about making life easier. It was about making life conscious, authentic, whole. The right person is not the one who gives you peace. They are the one who gives you the opportunity to become who you were always meant to be. They are the mirror, the catalyst, the sacred disruption that forces integration. And when you recognize them, when all the markers align and your self speaks its quiet certainty, hesitation becomes the only real mistake. If this exploration has touched something true within you, If you felt the echo of recognition in these words, then you are already on the path Jung described. Subscribe to continue this journey into the depths of psychological truth and symbolic wisdom. Comment below with your own experience of knowing without knowing how you knew. Share the moment when certainty transcended reason, when your psyche spoke louder than your fear. Because these stories matter, your recognition matters, and the courage to trust what you know might be exactly what someone else needs to hear, to trust what they know too. The journey toward wholeness continues, and you don't have to walk it alone.